Three, four, do 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 pow pow pow. All right, greetings from the wasteland. It's Freedom Phil out here, and what's the topic right now? Yeah, sometimes when Mike Huckabee talks, I just look at him and go, "Why the hell are you in any form of power?" This is one thing about Christian conservatives that I can't stand. It's one of the gaping things in logic that I look at, and I'm like, "How the hell are you still thinking this way?" And I get it. I get it. You really believe the Magic Tribe is the chosen people of the Waggity Woo in the sky. And a lot of your beliefs are based on a bunch of cryptic shit from way back in the day. They'll say there's a book. I want to talk about how ridiculous it is, and this is one of the reasons. Like I say, I'm a laid-back libertarian. I am not a conservative, and this is one of the major reasons. Still like to subscribe. Let's get into it, and always turn up the video speed. And why do I always say that? Because, hey, man, watch videos faster. The name of the channel is the instruction on what to do. You know? You faster when you start listening faster. Yeah, when I upload it, you should watch it 1.75. Let's get into it. Like, subscribe. I don't have a problem with the Magic Tribe doing what the Magic Tribe does in the desert. That's their business. I don't give a shit. I got a problem with America basically sitting in the cuck chair for a bunch of problems we don't make. Okay? Like, really, whatever they hash out between the Magic Tribe and the Palestinians, that's their business. I don't give a fuck. I don't want to be involved. I don't want to care about it. I don't have a problem with the Magic Tribe. But as I've said many times before, I don't want to have to fillet and, keep sitting there licking up their Star of David, the chocolate starfish. I don't think it's our job as Americans to support a bunch of other countries. And the answer for why we are generally forced into this position by a lot of our politicians is because of some wacky ass belief that they were raised to think. Well, you see, in the Waggity Woo ass holy book, it says, these are the chosen people. And validated and proved by what? Well, the book. You see, the book says it. The book says it, and it could not be true. Da 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 da. That's the way I view a lot of Christians when it comes to this issue. Perfectly logical, well-thinking people generally that suddenly become fucking retarded because of their spiritual beliefs. And by the way, if we can criticize Islam, which fair enough, you should, for, their holy prophet marrying a 6-year-old and consummating the marriage at 9, which is part of the reason that a lot of that freaky shit happens with them still to this very day, then why can't we criticize what's going on with our particular beliefs in America? Like, I'm glad if you find something to believe in, but can you just maybe keep that out of fucking politics, separation between church and state? Oh, that'd be too much to ask. Once again, not a Democrat, because you guys are fucking communism just with a cover and disguise. But goddamn, if there's a lot of Christian conservatives that I look at and think to myself, you guys are just sitting in the cuck chair for this other country, the Magic Tribe in the desert. And I don't say that to be rude or mean or any of that shit. In fact, I can appreciate what the Magic Tribe has built. They've built themselves up to be in the seats of power, academia, banks, insurance, medical, everything we do, they're making a penny off of. And not just a penny, but some serious dollars. But I think one thing that back in the day actually really ticked me off about the Magic Tribe was I'm watching the TV and that ad, Christians and Jews coming together to help the poor, needy Holocaust victims. I'm like, you guys are Goldman Sachs and you can't afford to make a food box for these old yentas? You can't go out there and maybe move these people out of these horrible countries they live in, bring them to the chosen land. Look, I know a good scam when I see it. God, it shakes its ass for the money. Like, if I had this, I could never get fucking YouTube shekels. I would never be approved for monetization. No fucking way. But I would totally be making money on this. So I respect the grift. But come on, man. Once you've made it to this echelon of power, money and power, you're still grifting on gullible Christians on daytime TV? Are you fucking kidding me? No, and then it's like, when people say they're our greatest ally, blah, blah, some truth to that. Honestly, there are some things we do, cooperations that are great. But you can bet, if it wasn't in the particular Magic Tribe's best interest, they wouldn't be dealing with us. Kind of like our America, when they point out how many African countries that are suffering right now, that there's no resources there. There's no resources. And effectively, we have no interest in being there. You know, we have and what's going on in these war-torn, broke-ass African countries. America does the same thing. And we get called out for it. So if it wasn't in the Magic Tribe's best interest or our best interest, there's a lot of places we just wouldn't deal with. But what I'm getting at with that is that I don't think it's in America's best interest to be constantly at war or supporting some crap. Like, I am for what's going on in Iran, because I think the Iranians are fucking nut jobs. Not the people, but the leaders who want to have a nuke. And once they have a nuke, you're going to just have to deal with these assholes supporting terrorism forever. I agree with that. But that's for our own best interest. But if you look around at some of the other Saudi Arabian countries, like Saudi Arabia, Middle Eastern countries, Dubai, and all this other stuff, they are doing perfectly fine. As far as their things are going, the extremists aren't really coming so much out of those countries. One could argue maybe they're quietly funding it. But the reality is those countries are first world, prosperous countries. So why is it America's interest to fund this country that believes, because of the book we wrote, you know, like what makes you the chosen people of the great waggity woo in the sky? You see, it says here in the book. Well, who wrote the book? Oh, we did. You know? And then like, well, we're supposed to have all this land from here to here because of what? Because it's in the book. The book that you wrote. Yeah, we wrote the book. But it's totally true, bro. Now, look, South Park clearly was clowning on Mormons because, oh, hey, we got the golden plates, and we looked through the golden plates that nobody ever found when Jebediah Smith, or Joseph, I know it's Joseph Smith, but when Jebediah Smith done found the plates and wrote the Book of Mormonism, we all called that out for how wacky this shit is. We all called out how insane some of the stuff the Pope, the Catholics were doing, and yet, how many people are still just sitting in the cuck chair, the Christianity cuck chair, for the Magic Tribe in the desert? Yes, sir, you're the chosen people. Can I lick your Star of David? Chocolate starfish, by the way, that's the reference I'm going with. I'm sorry, when I look at guys like Mike Huckabee and a lot of these conservative Christians, great, I'm glad you found some belief. But I don't think our national interest should be aligned with whatever some wacky shit was written in the Bible. Yes, surprise, for all you Democrats out there that watch my channel have a hate boner, you might be surprised that I actually am a laid-back libertarian. I do believe in the idea of separation of church and state. I believe you should be able to worship whatever the fuck you want. You know, hell, I made a god one time. It's called Shotok, the god of skull fucking. You know, we even have our own holidays. I should probably do a video on that. All praise Shotok. You know, the beginning of my God was literally, you know, skull fucking Yahweh's severed head. That's why you don't hear Yahweh that often, do you? He has to regenerate. Gods do that. It's a whole separate video, whole separate story. Show talk, skull fuck, rah! Might do it in claymation. But yeah, I just look at the Magic Tribe in the desert and I'm just like, oh yeah, totally. Why do we believe you? Well, the answer is because, well, you said so. And why do we got to be involved in this? Because a bunch of Christians sitting in a cuck chair. And I know that pisses off a lot of you. But at the end of the day, no. If you think it's, you know, if you think what Islam is doing is offensive and weird, or if you think what some Native Americans believe is, you know, backwards and ridiculous, well, believe you me, there's a lot of people out there that are sensible, like myself, who look at a lot of your Magic Tribes stuff, like you see in book Isaiah, this is why you have to hate the gays, or this is why you can't wear mixed fibers. Well, in this part of the book here, it says, you could start eating this food, but this other part of the book says you can't. And then the parts where they say, well, like, for instance, Jesus did not come to abolish the law, but to fulfill it. To complete the law? That means we're still living under Old Testament shit, you dumbasses. No. And they always go for some loop-de-loop fucking... These people are voters, and that's what's fine, you're voters. But these people are politicians. And before I need to give a shit about any other country in the world, go to look at Skid Row. Go look at LA. Go look at any city with a bunch of homeless people. By the way, I rag on our country for giving homes to people who broke into our country yesterday. But I'm going to be even more pissed if we're sending over people to fight wars or do any sort of bullshit. If we send over tax dollars to support a bunch of nonsense in some other country, and look, I do get the thing. Take out Hamas. I don't really fucking care. They're a problem. They're a shit stain on the Middle East. Take out some of these other countries. I agree with that. Take out Iran because I don't think Iran really needs to have a nuke. I agree with that. For the world's best interest, it'd be nice if countries like Iran didn't have a nuke and they went back to being a sane country. So there's a lot of things over there I agree with what they're doing. But the idea that we have real ass problems in America, and you see in other countries, some of the Middle Eastern countries are far more advanced than America. Oh shit, the Muslim countries are more advanced than the American, and it's because of the oil money. It's the oil money and the management of the oil money and building up their countries. Well, I think we should be building America first before worrying about the magic tribe in the desert. And the only reason there's a soft spot, this weakness, is literally because, let's be honest, Christians sit in a cuck chair. You know, a lot of fellow Christians would be out there, like, I'm not actually a Christian, but a lot of other Christians would look at Mormons and think, that's ridiculous. That's totally ridiculous. They just made that up. And then the wacky shit that was happening for ages with the Catholic Church. Oh my God, that's insane. The Catholic Church is nuts. Well, then this whole soft spot for, but the magic tribe in the desert, but why are people this way? Because they were indoctrinated as children. Or they were drug addicts and they just needed something to believe in. And I'm happy if that gave you some hope and some inspiration in your life. Don't get me wrong. But I don't think our separation between church and state. And if you're not going to do that, see, that's the thing. If you're not going to do separation between church and state, then where are the left wrong? Why can't the left just make up their wacky shit into some sort of spiritual belief? Oh yeah, it's totally spiritual that we must have our litter boxes. You know, somebody that dresses like a cat and hisses at other kids. You must have our litter boxes in the schools. Oh, trans rainbow this, it's now a religion. If we're not going to separate church and state on the massive geopolitics, and Americans are supposed to be, like, you're not even allowed to talk about this stuff. You're expected, like, and this is what ticks me off about it. If you just simply don't care about what goes on over there, they consider you anti-whatever type, you know? Anti-magic tribe, anti-tiny hat. It's the expectation that in order to be a good American, and I'm not supposed to make this video. That's part of the reason this channel will probably never be monetized. To be a good American, you have to be filleting their Star of David, their chocolate starfish. And I just don't want to do that. I want to let them do as they do. And I want, the rest of us to get on with America. And that's why I just, when I look at a lot of conservative Christians, I'm like, you guys are fucking part of the problem. Don't tell me about, the Constitution and the separation. And then they'll always go back and they always drag back. Well, see, the founding fathers everybody was that type of religion back then, because if you weren't, you were ostracized. Shut the fuck up. A lot of the great ideas the founding fathers made were pretty much neutral of that. All the language towards, you want to know what a lot of the language was towards the pro-Christian, pro-whatever agenda? That's called good writing. That's called good propaganda. If you wanted to get elected back then, you had to be that. And you want to see proof of that? You notice how the Democrats up until the basically end of the 90s were good Christian Democrats. Not all of them, but a lot of them were Christian Democrats. Because that's what won elections. And as that voter base from World War I and World War II were dying off, the working class, Christian Democrats were dying off, they started switching up their language, didn't they? Well, you don't think the founding fathers had that? There's a lot of them. There's a lot of your secret societies. A lot of people don't want to hear this. It's a whole separate conversation. Most of your secret societies were literally just a middle finger against the Catholic Church because people were sick of it. They made secret societies so they could have the parties and have the fun and do the things they wanted. So a lot of your enlightened thinkers were part of these societies. So that little act they do where they get on stage and act like, oh, yes, to the God and blah, blah, blah. That's what they did to get elected. Fucking get with the program, man. And like coming back to the whole magic tribe and, and all that, I don't have a problem with them. I just don't think that it's our job as Americans to fund it. To sing boots on the ground. And you know what? As far like I said it before, I support overthrowing Iran. I support a lot of the things that are going on, getting rid of Hezbollah and fucking Hamas and all that other shit. But like the reality is, past that, do I really think it's in America's best interest to constantly be involved in the politics of the Middle East? Fuck no. No. I care more about Americans than I care about some nonsense half world away. Freedom Phil, like, subscribe. Take it easy.